The blood on Olivia Jensen's hands had long since dried when she stumbled into Fort Stockton, Texas, her dress torn and muddy, her dark hair matted with river water and desperation. It was September 1878, and the dusty streets of this frontier town offered her last hope for safety, though she knew even before she opened her mouth that nobody would believe what had happened to her in the wilderness beyond the Pecos River. She had been traveling with a small wagon train from San Antonio, bound for El Paso, where her aunt supposedly waited with promises of work at her respectable boarding house. The other travelers had been kind enough at first, 3 families and 2 merchants, all seeking better fortunes in the Western Territories. But when the outlaws attacked at dawn 3 days ago, everything had shattered like glass thrown against stone. Olivia had watched Samuel Rake and his gang of 6 men murder the wagon master and scatter the families into the scrubland, stealing everything of value and setting fire to 2 of the wagons. She had run. God help her. She had run instead of staying to help the wounded, her feet carrying her toward the sound of rushing water she prayed might hide her trail. The Pecos had been swollen from recent rains, churning brown and angry between its banks, but she had waded in anyway, letting the current pull her downstream while gunshots echoed behind her. She had nearly drowned twice, her skirts dragging her under until she managed to grab hold of a fallen cottonwood that jutted from the bank. For hours she had clung there, too terrified to move, watching the sun arc overhead while her fingers turned white and numb. When she finally hauled herself onto solid ground, shivering and gasping, she had discovered she was not alone. A man lay face down in the mud 20 feet away, blood seeping from a wound in his shoulder. At first she thought he was dead, one of the outlaws thrown from his horse perhaps, but when she crept closer, she recognized him as one of the merchants from her wagon train. His name was Theodore something, she could not quite remember. She had tried to help him, truly she had, rolling him over and pressing her hands against the bleeding wound, but his eyes had been glassy and unfocused. He had grabbed her wrist with surprising strength and gasped out a warning about the outlaws doubling back, about Samuel Rake, swearing he would hunt down any survivors, before the life left his body entirely. That was when she had started running again, this time with purpose, following the river south and west toward Fort Stockton. She had walked for 2 days and a night, hiding when she heard horses, drinking from the river when thirst overwhelmed her fear of sickness, eating nothing but some wild berries that made her stomach cramp. The blood on her hands was Theodore's blood, and no matter how many times she scrubbed them in the river, she could still see the dark stains under her fingernails. Now she stood outside the sheriff's office, her legs trembling with exhaustion, trying to gather the courage to walk inside. Fort Stockton was bigger than she had expected. A military outpost turned civilian settlement with adobe buildings lining streets that stretched toward the rolling hills beyond. Soldiers mingled with cattlemen, Mexican traders bargained with store owners, and somewhere a piano played a jaunty tune that seemed grotesque given what she had endured. The sheriff was a heavy-set man with gray whiskers and suspicious eyes. His name was Porter, according to the sign on his desk, and he listened to her story with increasing skepticism, his jaw working on a wad of tobacco that bulged his cheek. When she finished, breathless and shaking, he leaned back in his chair and studied her for a long moment. "Miss, I am going to be straight with you," he said finally. "We get a lot of folks passing through here with wild tales. You say Samuel Rake attacked your wagon train, but Rake has not been seen in these parts for near 6 months. Last I heard, he was up in New Mexico territory causing trouble near Santa Fe." "It was him," Olivia insisted. I heard the wagon master say his name before he was shot. Dark hair, scar on his left cheek, rides a paint horse. Lots of outlaws match that description, miss. And you say you were in the Pecos River for hours. That current should have carried you miles downstream, probably drowned you outright given how high the water has been running. I grabbed a tree. I told you there was a fallen cottonwood, and then you found a dead man, and then you walked for 2 days without food and made it all the way here. Porter shook his head. Miss Jensen, I think maybe you got separated from your party and got yourself turned around. The sun can do strange things to a person's mind out in that desert. Maybe you saw some drifters steal a horse or two, and your imagination did the rest. Heat flooded Olivia's face. I did not imagine 7 people being murdered. I did not imagine being hunted like an animal. You need to send someone out there. Those families might still need help. I will send a deputy to ride out toward the Pecos tomorrow, see if there is any sign of trouble, Porter interrupted. But Miss Jensen, I want you to understand something. This is a rough country, and we cannot go chasing every story that comes through that door. Now, do you have any money, any place to stay? The question landed like a blow. Olivia touched the small locket at her throat, the only thing of value she still possessed. No. Everything I owned was in the wagons. Porter sighed and stood, fishing some coins from his pocket. There is a boarding house 2 streets over Mrs. Chen's place. This should get you a room for a few nights and some hot meals. After that, you will need to find work. I suggest the laundry, or maybe one of the hotels needs kitchen help. She wanted to scream at him, to make him understand the truth of what she had survived, but the exhaustion was too heavy. She took the coins with numb fingers and walked out into the late afternoon sun, feeling more alone than she had even in the wilderness. Mrs. Chen's boarding house was a 2-story adobe structure with a shaded courtyard where chickens pecked at scattered grain. The proprietor was a small Chinese woman with sharp eyes and surprisingly gentle hands, who took one look at Olivia and immediately drew a bath without asking questions. That kindness nearly broke her. She sat in the copper tub and wept while Mrs. Chen brought her soap and clean towels, her tears mixing with the river water that finally rinsed from her hair. The next morning, wearing a borrowed dress that was too short in the sleeves, Olivia set out to find work. Fort Stockton was not unkind, but it was not particularly welcoming either. The hotel had no positions available. The general store already had help. The saloon owner looked her up and down in a way that made her skin crawl before suggesting she might find more lucrative work upstairs, an offer she declined with as much dignity as she could muster. She was walking past the livery stable, wondering if she should simply use her locket to buy a horse and try to reach El Paso on her own, when she heard a commotion from inside. A horse was screaming, the high-pitched sound of an animal in genuine distress, and men were shouting. Without thinking, Olivia hitched up her skirts and ran toward the sound. Inside the stable, a massive bay stallion was rearing and plunging against the walls of a stall, eyes rolling white with terror. 2 men were trying to approach with ropes, but each time they got close the horse lashed out with iron-shod hooves. In the corner, an older man with a bloodied arm was being helped outside by a boy. "He's going to kill himself," one of the men shouted. "We need to get a halter on him before he breaks a leg." Olivia saw it immediately, what the men could not see from their angle. A rattlesnake was coiled in the corner of the stall, likely seeking the warmth of the stable. The horse was not being vicious, it was terrified. "Stop," she called out. "There is a snake in there." The men turned to stare at her, clearly annoyed at the interruption. "Miss, you need to step back. This is not. There is a rattlesnake in the back left corner," she said firmly. "The horse is not the problem." One of the men, younger than the other with sun-bleached hair and eyes the color of summer sky, paused. He moved carefully to the side, peering into the stall from a different angle, and his expression changed. "She is right. I can see it from here." "Well, I will be damned," the older man muttered. "How did you spot that, miss?" "I grew up on a farm," Olivia said, which was not entirely true but close enough. "We had horses. They do not panic like that without reason." The younger man was already moving, grabbing a long-handled shovel from the wall. With careful, deliberate movements, he entered the stall, speaking in a low voice that seemed to calm the stallion. The horse still danced nervously, but its ears swiveled toward the man's voice, listening. In one swift motion, he pinned the snake's head with the shovel and grabbed it behind the skull, carrying it outside to be killed humanely at a safe distance. The crisis resolved. The stallion gradually settled, though it continued to snort and stamp. The younger man emerged from the stall, wiping his hands on his denim trousers, and turned to Olivia with an expression of genuine gratitude. "That was sharp of you, miss. Likely saved us all from getting kicked to pieces, and probably saved this horse from injury. He is a valuable animal, just came in from a ranch up north." He extended his hand. "Yates Irving, I own this stable." She shook his hand, surprised by the warmth of his calloused palm. "Olivia Jensen." Something flickered in his eyes, recognition perhaps. "You are the woman who came in yesterday, the one with the story about Samuel Rake." Her heart sank. Of course word would have spread already in a town this size. "You mean the story nobody believes?" "I did not say I did not believe it," Yates said carefully. He was perhaps 24 or 25, with an honest face made interesting by a small scar through his left eyebrow and a mouth that looked like it smiled often. "I said you are the one with the story. There is a difference. Sheriff Porter thinks the sun cooked my brain and I imagined the whole thing. Sheriff Porter is a good man, but he is getting old and tired. He does not like complications that require him to ride far from town." Yates gestured toward the back of the stable, where a small office held a desk and some chairs. "Can I offer you some coffee? Least I can do after you kept me from getting my skull cracked." The coffee was strong and bitter, but Olivia drank it gratefully, realizing she had not eaten since the day before. Yates rummaged in a cupboard and produced some bread and cheese, which he set between them without comment. As she ate, trying not to seem too desperate, he watched her with those clear blue eyes that held no judgment. "Tell me what happened," he said. "The real version, not whatever you told Porter." So she did. This time she left nothing out, describing the attack in detail, the faces of the outlaws she had seen, the way Samuel Rake had laughed as he shot the wagon master in cold blood. She told him about the river, about clinging to the tree while her arms screamed with pain, about finding Theodore's body and the warning he had gasped out. She told him about the walk to town, about seeing shadows in every stand of mesquite and jumping at every sound. When she finished, Yates was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Samuel Rake's younger brother has a ranch about 40 miles northeast of here. Mostly keeps to himself, runs cattle legally as far as anyone knows, but there has always been talk. If Rake needed a place to lay low after a robbery, that would be as good as any." "You believe me," Olivia said, and hated how her voice cracked on the words. "I believe something bad happened to you out there. Whether it was Rake or some other outlaws does not change the fact that you survived it." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "What are you planning to do now?" "I need work. Mrs. Chen gave me a few nights in her boarding house, but after that I will need to pay my own way. I thought I might find something in town, but nobody is hiring." Yates rubbed his jaw thoughtfully. "I could use help here at the stable. The man who got bit by that horse, Jackson, He has been saying he wants to retire and move in with his daughter in Austin. I have been managing on my own, but it is too much for one person. The work is hard, mucking stalls and feeding horses, grooming and some tack repair, but it pays fair, and there is a small room in the back you could use. Olivia stared at him. You are offering me a job just like that? You knew about that snake when nobody else did. You did not panic when that stallion was tearing the place apart. That tells me you have sense and courage, which is more than I can say for most folks. He stood and extended his hand again. What do you say, Miss Jensen? Want to work in a stable that smells like horse manure and hay? She shook his hand firmly, feeling something loosen in her chest. When do I start? How about now? That bay still needs to be checked over for injuries, and I could use another set of eyes. Working with Yates Irving felt natural in a way that surprised Olivia. He showed her where everything was kept, the various feeds and supplements for different horses, the grooming tools and medicine supplies. He introduced her to each horse by name, explaining their quirks and preferences with genuine affection. There was Dancer, an old gray mare who liked to steal hats. There was Brutus, a massive draft horse with a gentle soul who was terrified of cats. There was Comet, a quick-tempered chestnut who would bite if you did not watch her ears. And there was the bay stallion, whose name was Tempest, still nervous but calmer now that the snake was gone. Together, Olivia and Yates examined him for injuries, running their hands down his legs and checking his hooves. She found the small cut on his right foreleg that had started to swell, and Yates praised her sharp eyes while he cleaned and bandaged it. You have done this before, he observed as she held Tempest's head, speaking softly to keep him calm while Yates worked. My father had horses. Before he died, before everything fell apart. She had not meant to say that much, but something about Yates invited honesty. After that, my mother and I moved to San Antonio. She took in sewing. When she got sick last year, I tried to keep up with the work, but I was not as skilled. After she passed, I could not afford the rent anymore. My aunt in El Paso wrote saying she could offer me work, so I sold everything and joined that wagon train. I am sorry about your parents, Yates said quietly. That is a hard road to walk. Everyone has hard roads out here. That is the nature of this country. But his sympathy touched her nonetheless. That evening, after the horses were fed and settled for the night, Yates showed her the small room at the back of the stable. It was plain but clean, with a narrow bed, a washstand, and a trunk for belongings. A window looked out over the hills beyond town, where the sunset painted the sky in shades of orange and purple. It is not fancy, Yates said, but it is private and safe. Door has a good lock. It is perfect, Olivia said honestly. After sleeping on the ground for 2 nights and fearing every sound in the darkness, a room with a door and a lock seemed like unspeakable luxury. She settled in quickly over the following days, falling into a rhythm that exhausted her body but quieted her mind. She rose before dawn to help feed the horses, spent her days mucking stalls and grooming animals that came in for boarding, learned to repair broken tack and mix poultices for sore legs. The work was hard and dirty, but honest. Nobody looked at her with suspicion here. The horses did not care about her story or whether anyone believed it. Yates was a good employer and, she was discovering, a good man. He paid her fairly, did not try to cheat her on hours, and treated her with respect that never crossed into familiarity. He was patient when she made mistakes, quick to praise when she did something well, and had a dry sense of humor that sometimes caught her off guard and made her laugh despite herself. You know what Tempest did this morning? He said one afternoon while they were repairing a broken stall door. Stole my breakfast right off the bench. I turned my back for 2 seconds and he snatched the whole biscuit, paper wrapping and all. I told you not to leave food where he can reach it. He is smarter than you give him credit for. He is a menace is what he is, too clever for his own good." But Yates said it with affection, the way someone might complain about a beloved but mischievous child. They worked well together, developing an easy partnership where words were often unnecessary. Olivia learned to read Yates's moods and preferences, understanding when he needed silence and when he was open to conversation. She discovered he had inherited the stable from his uncle 2 years ago, that he had grown up in Fort Stockton and knew everyone in town, that he had once considered joining the cavalry, but decided he preferred working with horses on his own terms. In turn, she found herself sharing more about her own life, small details that emerged naturally during long hours of work. She told him about her mother's talent for embroidery, about the songs her father used to sing while working with the horses, about her fear of thunderstorms that stemmed from a tornado she had witnessed as a child. Yates listened without judgment, asking thoughtful questions, treating her memories with care. It was during their 3rd week working together that the nightmare started. Olivia would wake in the darkness, heart pounding, convinced she heard gunshots or felt the river current pulling her under. One night she woke screaming, certain she saw Samuel Rake's scarred face in her window, and stumbled out of her room in a panic only to nearly collide with Yates, who had come running from his small house next to the stable. "Easy, easy," he said, catching her shoulders to steady her. "You are safe." It was a dream. She was shaking so hard her teeth chattered. "I saw him. He was at the window." Yates guided her to sit on a hay bale and grabbed a lantern, checking the entire stable and the area around her window thoroughly. There was nothing, of course, just shadows and her own terror. When he came back, she was crying from frustration and exhaustion. "I am sorry," she managed. "I know it was not real. I know I am being foolish." "You are not foolish. You went through something terrible and your mind is still trying to make sense of it." He sat down beside her, keeping a respectful distance but close enough that she could feel his solid presence. "My cousin fought in the war, came back with nightmares that plagued him for years." He said the worst part was feeling weak for having them, like he should be able to just stop thinking about what he had seen. How did he get past it? Time, mostly, and talking about it when he needed to. And having people around him who understood it was not weakness, just a wound that did not show on the outside. Yates handed her his handkerchief. "You can wake me if you need to, Olivia. I mean that. I would rather lose some sleep than have you suffer alone." It was the first time he had used her given name, and something in the gentle way he said it made her chest tight. "Thank you, Yates. Now, I am going to make some terrible coffee and we are going to sit here until you feel steady enough to go back to sleep. And if you want to talk or sit in silence, either is fine with me." They sat together in the quiet stable, surrounded by the soft sounds of horses shifting in their stalls, and Olivia felt some of the terror recede. Yates told her stories about the various horses, about the time Dancer ate an entire box of sugar cubes and made herself sick, about the cavalry officer who had been bucked off by his own mount in front of half the town. His voice was calm and steady, an anchor in the darkness. When she finally felt ready to return to her room, Yates walked her to her door. "I am right next door if you need anything," he reminded her. "Leave your window open a bit so you can call out if necessary." She did, and slept better knowing he was close. The following week, a rancher came to town claiming his cattle had been rustled by a gang operating near the Pecos River. He described the leader as a man with a scarred face riding a paint horse. Olivia heard about it from Mrs. Chen, who heard it from the butcher, who heard it from the rancher himself. Her heart started racing the moment Mrs. Chen mentioned the scar. She went straight to Sheriff Porter, but he was dismissive. Bill Henderson is always claiming someone stole his cattle. Half the time they have just wandered off, and he finds them a week later. I would not put much stock in it. But the description matches what I told you. Samuel Rake, Miss Jensen, I sent Deputy Williams out to the Pecos like I promised. He did not find any sign of a massacre, no burned wagons, no bodies, just an old campsite that could have been from anyone. Porter's expression was not unkind, but it was firm. I know you believe something happened to you, but without evidence, there is not much I can do. Frustration burned hot in Olivia's throat. So I am supposed to just forget about it, pretend those people were not murdered. I am suggesting you focus on building a life here instead of chasing ghosts. You have a good job working for Yates Irving. That is more than many folks have. Do not throw it away over something you cannot change. She left the sheriff's office feeling defeated and angry. Yates found her that evening sitting on the fence behind the stable, staring out at the darkening hills. He climbed up beside her without speaking, just sitting in companionable silence until she was ready to talk. Porter still does not believe me, she said finally. Even with Henderson's cattle being stolen by someone matching Rake's description, Porter is set in his ways. He does not like to think there is real danger this close to town, because that means admitting he might not be able to protect people. So what am I supposed to do? Just let Rake get away with murder? Yates was quiet for a moment. Can I ask you something? What would it change if Porter believed you? Those people are still dead. Rake is still out there. Whether the sheriff believes your story or not does not alter those facts. It would mean I am not crazy. It would mean what I survived actually mattered. It matters, Yates said firmly. You matter. What you went through was real and terrible, and you survived it. That takes strength most people cannot imagine. You do not need Porter's validation to know that is true. She looked at him, at the earnest concern in his face, and felt something shift in her chest. Over the past weeks, she had come to rely on Yates in ways that went beyond employer and employee. He had become her friend, her confidant, the one person in Fort Stockton who treated her as though her trauma was real and valid. But now, sitting close enough to feel the warmth radiating from his body, she realized her feelings were becoming complicated in ways she had not anticipated. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for believing me when nobody else would." "Always," he replied, and the word felt like a promise. The next morning brought trouble of a different sort. Olivia was grooming Dancer when a well-dressed man entered the stable, looking around with obvious distaste. He was perhaps 40, with oiled hair and a city suit that marked him as an outsider. "I am looking for the proprietor," he announced. "I need to arrange transportation for a business venture." Yates emerged from the tack room, wiping his hands on a rag. "I am Yates Irving. What can I do for you? My name is Marcus Caldwell. I am a land speculator from Houston, looking to purchase property in the area. I need someone who knows the territory to guide me to various ranches and parcels over the next 2 weeks. I will pay well." Yates frowned. "I run a stable, Mr. Caldwell, not a guide service. You might try. I will pay $50 for 2 weeks of your time, plus expenses." Caldwell's smile was all teeth and no warmth. "I have been told you know this area better than anyone." $50 was a substantial sum, more than Yates would normally make in a month. Olivia saw the conflict on his face and understood immediately what he was thinking. That money could go toward improvements to the stable, toward the new roof he needed before winter, toward a dozen necessary things he had been putting off. "I cannot leave the stable unattended for 2 weeks, Yates said. "Your employee can manage it, surely. She seems competent enough." Caldwell barely glanced at Olivia, dismissing her as easily as he might swat a fly. Yates looked at Olivia, silently asking the question. She wanted to tell him no, to say she needed him here, but that would be selfish. This was his livelihood, and $50 could make a real difference. "I can handle things," she said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. "It is just feeding and grooming, nothing I have not done before." "There is Tempest," Yates said doubtfully. "He is still unpredictable, and some of the horses need medicine that has to be mixed just right. I will be careful. And if anything goes wrong, I can get help from Jackson or one of the other stable hands in town." Yates studied her for a long moment, then turned back to Caldwell. $45, and we stick to established trails and roads. I am not guiding you into dangerous territory." "Agreed," Caldwell said, extending his hand. The deal was struck, and Yates spent the rest of that day showing Olivia every detail of the stable's operation, going over each horse's needs multiple times, writing out careful instructions for mixing medicines and supplements. His concern was touching, if a bit excessive. "I know how to feed a horse, Yates," she said with amusement as he explained the proper amount of grain for the fourth time. "I just want to make sure everything goes smoothly. I do not like leaving you alone to manage all of this." "I will be fine. What is the worst that could happen?" "Dancer steals someone's hat. Brutus gets scared by Mrs. Chen's cat again." But her attempt at humor fell flat. Yates's expression was serious as he said, "If there is any trouble, any sign that someone is bothering you or making you uncomfortable, you go straight to the boarding house or the hotel. Do not stay here alone if you feel unsafe." "You are worried about the outlaws," she realized. "I am worried about a lot of things. You are a young woman alone in a stable on the edge of town. That is opportunity for the wrong kind of men to get ideas, outlaw or otherwise." His protectiveness warmed her even as it chafed slightly. "I have dealt with worse than unwanted attention, Yates. I think I can handle myself." "I know you can. I am still going to worry." He left the next morning with Marcus Caldwell, and Olivia threw herself into the work of managing the stable alone. It was harder than she had anticipated, the sheer physical labor of caring for 15 horses by herself, leaving her exhausted by nightfall. But there was satisfaction in it too, in proving she was capable, in maintaining Yates's business while he was gone. The first 2 days went smoothly. She fell into a routine, rising even earlier than usual to get all the feeding done before the heat of the day, working through the afternoon on grooming and maintenance, collapsing into bed at night too tired for nightmares. Mrs. Chen brought her meals, sitting with her for brief conversations that Olivia came to treasure. The older woman spoke little about herself, but she had a knack for asking questions that made Olivia think deeply about what she wanted from life. "You are good with the horses, Mrs. Chen observed on the third evening. "This work makes you happy, it does," Olivia said, realizing it was true. "I like caring for them. They are honest creatures, no pretense or judgment, and Mr. Irving, he is a good employer, the best I could ask for. He is fair and kind." Mrs. Chen's dark eyes were knowing. "Kind men are rare. You would be wise not to take such a gift for granted." The comment stayed with Olivia long after Mrs. Chen left. She found herself thinking about Yates more than was probably proper, remembering the way he smiled when one of the horses did something amusing, the careful way he handled injured animals, the patience he showed when teaching her new skills. She missed him, she realized. Missed his presence, his conversation, the easy companionship they had developed. On the fourth day, a man came to board his horse for the night. He was rough-looking, with hard eyes and a gun belt worn low, the kind of man Olivia had learned to be wary of. But his money was good, and she had no reason to refuse his business. She took his payment, showed him where his horse would be stabled, and thought nothing more of it until she was closing up for the evening. He was waiting near the back entrance, leaning against the wall with his arms crossed. "Evening, miss." Every instinct Olivia had developed over the past week screamed danger. "The stable is closed for the night. If you need something, you can return in the morning." "I was just thinking it is strange, a pretty young thing like you working all alone out here. Where is Irving?" "He will be back shortly," she lied. "Any minute now, actually." The man's smile was unpleasant. "That is funny, because I heard he left town with some fancy man from Houston. Heard he would be gone 2 weeks. Olivia's hand moved to the pitchfork leaning against the stall. "You should leave now." "Or what? You are going to stab me with farm equipment?" He pushed off the wall, taking a step toward her. "I am just being friendly. No need to be hostile." "I am not interested in friends. Take your horse and leave, or I will scream loud enough to bring half the town running." Something in her voice, or perhaps the way she gripped the pitchfork, made him reconsider. He held up his hands in mock surrender. "No offense meant, miss. I will just collect my animal and be on my way." She watched him saddle his horse and ride off, her heart pounding. Only when he was out of sight did she allow herself to shake. That night she locked her door and pushed her trunk against it for good measure, lying awake for hours listening to every sound. The next morning she was grooming Tempest, still jumpy from the previous night's encounter, when she heard raised voices from the street. Curious and a bit concerned, she walked to the front of the stable to investigate. A crowd had gathered outside the general store, and people were talking in urgent, angry tones. "What happened?" she asked a woman standing at the edge of the group. "The Henderson ranch was attacked last night. Bill and his 2 sons were killed, and the ranch house was burned. Sheriff is saying it was Samuel Rake and his gang." The world seemed to tilt beneath Olivia's feet. "Are they sure?" Bill's wife survived by hiding in the root cellar. She said she saw the whole thing, said the leader had a scar on his face and was laughing while they did it. Just like that girl claimed a few weeks back, the one everyone said was making things up. Olivia's hands went numb. She had been right. She had been right all along, and now 3 more people were dead because nobody had believed her. The crowd's conversation washed over her in fragments. "Sheriff is putting together a posse. About time someone did something about Rake. Should have listened when that Jensen girl first came to town warning about him." She walked back to the stable in a daze, her mind spinning. 3 more people dead. How many more would die before Rake was stopped? She was feeding the horses mechanically, trying to process everything, when Sheriff Porter appeared in the doorway. "Miss Jensen," he said, and his voice was gruff with something that might have been shame. "I owe you an apology. Seems you were telling the truth about Rake being in the area. Mrs. Henderson's description matches what you told me exactly. 3 people are dead, Sheriff. Does my vindication bring them back?" "No, it does not." He took off his hat, turning it in his hands. "I am forming a posse to go after Rake and his gang. We are leaving in 2 hours. I wanted you to know that I am taking this seriously now." 2 hours, Olivia's mind raced. "Yates is not back yet. I am alone here." "I know, and I am sorry for that, but I cannot wait." "Every hour we delay gives Rake more time to disappear." Porter hesitated. "I know it is not much comfort, but I am leaving Deputy Williams in town. If you have any trouble, any at all, you find him." After Porter left, Olivia tried to focus on her work, but her thoughts kept returning to the Henderson family. She had not known them well, had only seen Bill Henderson that once when he reported his cattle stolen, but they had been real people with lives and families, and now they were gone. Because of Samuel Rake, because nobody had stopped him when they should have. That afternoon, a rider approached the stable at a gallop, dust rising behind his horse. Olivia recognized Marcus Caldwell's mount and felt a lurch of concern. Yates was riding beside him, and both men looked grim. Yates dismounted quickly, already moving toward her. "Are you all right? We heard about the Henderson ranch in the last town. I wanted to make sure I am fine," she assured him. "But Yates, they are dead, all of them except Mrs. Henderson. Rake killed them just like I said he would." His face went hard. "I know. We met some men on the road who told us everything. I ended the contract with Caldwell and came back as fast as I could. You did not have to do that. I told you I could handle things here. This is not about whether you can handle it. This is about me not wanting you to be alone when there are murderers riding around the countryside." He took her hands, and she was startled by the intensity in his eyes. "Olivia, when I heard about the attack, all I could think about was you being here by yourself, unprotected. It terrified me." Something in his voice made her breath catch. "Yates, I know this probably is not the right time and maybe I am overstepping, but I need you to know that you have come to mean a great deal to me. More than just an employee, more than just a friend." He paused, seeming to gather courage. "These past weeks working with you, getting to know you, have been some of the best I have had in a long time. And the thought of something happening to you makes me feel like someone has reached into my chest and grabbed hold of my heart." Olivia stared at him, her own heart hammering. She had suspected her feelings for Yates were growing beyond friendship, but she had not dared to hope he might feel the same. "You are not overstepping," she said quietly. "I have felt it too, this thing growing between us. I just did not know how to name it. I am not a man of fancy words, and I know I do not have much to offer beyond this stable and an honest heart. But if you would let me, I would very much like to court you properly, to see if what we are feeling might grow into something lasting." She smiled, feeling warmth bloom in her chest despite the darkness of the day's news. "I would like that very much." He grinned, that open, honest expression that made him look younger, and squeezed her hands gently before releasing them. "Good. That is good. Now let us get these horses settled. I want to hear everything that happened while I was gone." They worked together as the sun set, and Olivia told him about the man who had made her uncomfortable, about her fear that night, about the news of the Henderson attack. Yates listened with increasing anger, particularly when she described the encounter with the rough stranger. "You should have sent word to me somehow. I would have come back immediately." "There was no way to send word, and besides, I handled it. He left when I made it clear I was not going to be intimidated. Still, I do not like thinking of you facing that alone." They were interrupted by the sound of horses approaching. A group of perhaps 20 men rode past the stable, heavily armed and grim-faced. Sheriff Porter was at their head, and he raised a hand in acknowledgement as they passed. The posse heading out to hunt Samuel Rake. "I hope they catch him," Olivia said quietly. "I hope they make him pay for what he has done. They will do their best. Porter might be old, but he knows how to track outlaws. And some of those men rode with the cavalry during the war. They know what they are doing." But Olivia felt a coldness in her gut, a premonition that things were not going to be that simple. Samuel Rake had survived this long by being smart and ruthless. He would not be easy to catch. The days that followed were tense. News filtered back to town in bits and pieces. The posse had tracked Rake's gang to the Pecos River region but lost their trail in the rocky terrain. There had been a brief exchange of gunfire, but no one was injured and the outlaws escaped. Porter was keeping the posse out for at least another week, determined to find where Rake was hiding. During this time, Olivia and Yates grew closer. He was true to his word about courting her properly, bringing her small gifts like wildflowers he picked on the hills, or a ribbon he bought from the general store that matched her eyes. They took walks together in the evenings after the stable work was done, talking about everything and nothing, learning each other's thoughts and dreams. "What do you want from life?" Yates asked her one evening as they sat on the fence watching the stars emerge. "If you could have anything, what would it be?" Olivia considered the question carefully. "I want stability, safety, a place where I belong and people I can trust. I have spent so much of my life feeling uncertain, like the ground might disappear beneath my feet at any moment. I want to feel rooted somewhere." "That sounds like a good dream to have. What about you? What does Yates Irving want from his life?" "I want to expand the stable, build it into something really special. I want to breed horses, train them properly, maybe even supply mounts to the cavalry. But more than that, I want someone to share it all with, someone who understands why I care about this work, who sees the value in it." He glanced at her sideways. "Someone exactly like you, if I am being honest." She felt her cheeks warm. "You barely know me, Yates. We have only been acquainted a few weeks. I know enough. I know you are brave and resourceful. I know you are kind to animals and honest in your dealings. I know you do not give up even when things are hard, even when nobody believes you. That tells me everything I need to know about your character." She reached for his hand, lacing her fingers through his. "I know you are the first person in a long time who has made me feel safe. The first person who has treated me like I matter, not just as labor or as a burden, but as someone valuable in my own right. That means more to me than I know how to say." He lifted her hand and pressed a kiss to her knuckles, a gesture so tender it made her throat tight. "You are valuable, Olivia Jensen. Never doubt that." That night, for the first time since the attack on the wagon train, Olivia slept without nightmares. The peace did not last long. 2 days later, while Olivia and Yates were working together to rescue Brutus, a young boy came running to the stable, breathless and wide-eyed. "Mr. Irving, Miss Jensen, Sheriff Porter sent me. The posse is coming back, but they are being chased. Outlaws are right behind them, and there is going to be a fight when they reach town." Yates immediately started moving, securing the horses in their stalls and gathering what weapons he had. "How many outlaws?" The boy said, "Maybe 6 or 7. Samuel Rake is leading them." Olivia's blood went cold. Rake was coming here to Fort Stockton. After everything, after all the death and terror, he was bringing his violence directly to the town she was trying to make her home. "You need to hide," Yates said urgently, loading his rifle. "Get to the boarding house or the hotel, somewhere with multiple people around. Do not stay here." "What are you going to do?" "I am going to help defend the town. Every man who can shoot is going to be needed." "Then I am staying too. I can shoot." "Olivia, no, this is too dangerous. I have faced Samuel Rake before and survived. I am not running again." She met his eyes steadily. "Besides, you are going to need every hand if there are only a few of you against his gang. I can help." Yates looked torn, clearly wanting to protect her but also recognizing the truth in her words. Finally, he nodded tersely and handed her a pistol from his desk drawer. "Stay behind cover. Do not take unnecessary risks. And Olivia, if things go badly, if Rake's gang breaks through, you run. Promise me." "I promise." They could hear the thunder of approaching horses now, shouts echoing through the streets. Yates positioned them near the stable entrance, using the heavy wooden doors as cover. Other men were taking up positions along the main street, in windows and doorways, rifles at the ready. The few women and children in sight were being herded into the stone church at the center of town, the most defensible building available. Sheriff Porter and what remained of his posse came galloping into town, perhaps a dozen men now instead of the 20 who had left. They were dust-covered and exhausted, several wounded and slumped in their saddles. Right behind them came the outlaws, firing as they rode, bullets kicking up dirt in the street. "Now," Porter shouted, and the men of Fort Stockton opened fire. The noise was deafening, a cacophony of gunshots and shouting that seemed to split the world apart. Olivia crouched behind the door, her pistol raised, trying to spot targets through the chaos. She saw one outlaw fall from his horse, then another. But Rake's gang was returning fire viciously, and she heard someone cry out in pain nearby. Through the dust and smoke, she saw him. Samuel Rake, exactly as she remembered, scarred face twisted in a snarl of rage as he fired his rifle with deadly accuracy. He was shouting orders to his men, trying to organize them into a coordinated attack, but the defenders of Fort Stockton were not giving them time to regroup. A bullet struck the doorframe near Olivia's head, sending splinters flying. Yates immediately pulled her lower, positioning himself between her and the street. "Stay down." The fight seemed to last forever, though it was probably only a few minutes. Gradually, the outlaws realized they were outgunned and outmaneuvered. 3 of them were dead in the street, 2 more wounded and trying to flee. Samuel Rake made a last desperate attempt to rally his men, but when another outlaw fell, he apparently decided survival was more important than pride. He wheeled his paint horse around and spurred it toward the edge of town. "He is getting away," someone shouted. Olivia did not think, just reacted. She stepped out from behind the door, raised the pistol with both hands the way her father had taught her years ago, and fired. The shot went wide, but it was close enough to make Rake's horse shy violently to the left, directly into the path of Sheriff Porter's rifle. Porter's shot caught Rake in the shoulder, spinning him half out of his saddle. The outlaw managed to stay mounted, but he was clearly injured, hunched over and bleeding as he disappeared over the rise at the edge of town. "After him," Porter commanded, but his horse was too exhausted to give chase, and most of the other mounts were in similar condition. By the time anyone could organize pursuit, Rake was long gone. The immediate danger over, Olivia lowered her pistol with shaking hands. The street was a disaster, bodies and blood and terrified horses. 3 townsmen were wounded, 1 seriously, but miraculously no one from Fort Stockton had been killed. Of Rake's gang, 4 were dead and 2 were wounded badly enough to be easily captured. Samuel Rake himself had escaped, injured but alive. Yates put his arm around Olivia's shoulders, holding her steady as the adrenaline drained away and left her trembling. "You hit him. Your shot made him turn into Porter's line of fire." "I was aiming for his chest," she admitted. "I missed. You saved lives by making that shot." If Rake had escaped clean, he would have regrouped and come back. Now he is wounded, probably badly, and his gang is broken. Yates turned her to face him, his hands gentle on her shoulders. "You were incredibly brave, and you scared me half to death. You told me to stay behind cover." "I know what I said, and I know you did what needed to be done. I am just glad you are all right." They helped tend to the wounded and secure the prisoners over the next hours. The town doctor, a grizzled man named Stevens, worked tirelessly to patch up the injured while Mrs. Chen and several other women brought water and bandages. The captured outlaws were locked in the small jail, both of them sullen and uncooperative when questioned about where Rake might go to ground. That evening, as the town was still processing what had happened, Sheriff Porter came to the stable where Olivia and Yates were checking the horses for any injuries from stray bullets. "Miss Jensen," he said, and his voice was different now, respectful in a way it had not been before. "I owe you more than an apology. You tried to warn us weeks ago, and if I had listened, maybe the Hendersons would still be alive. I let my own stubbornness and pride get in the way of doing my job. I appreciate you saying that, Sheriff. More than that, I want to thank you for what you did today. That shot you made likely saved lives. You have more courage than most men I have served with." He cleared his throat awkwardly. "The town owes you a debt, After Porter left, Yates looked at Olivia with something like wonder. "Do you realize what just happened? The sheriff of Fort Stockton, the man who did not believe a word you said, just publicly acknowledged you were right and thanked you for your bravery." "It does not bring anyone back," Olivia said quietly. "The Henderson family is still dead. The people from my wagon train are still dead. No, it does not change that, but it means something that the truth is known now, that people understand what you survived and that they respect you for it." Yates took her hands. "You do not have to carry that burden alone anymore." She leaned against him, letting him hold her, feeling the steady beat of his heart against her ear. "I am so tired, Yates. Tired of running, tired of being afraid, tired of death and violence. I know you are." He stroked her hair gently. "But you are safe now. Rake is wounded and on the run, his gang is destroyed, and you are here with people who care about you. You can rest now." That night, Olivia finally let herself grieve properly for everything she had lost. She cried for her parents, for the people who died in the wagon train attack, for the Henderson family, for the innocence she had possessed before the world showed her how cruel it could be. Yates stayed with her through it all, holding her when she needed comfort, giving her space when she needed to be alone with her sorrow, never judging her tears or telling her to be strong. When the grief finally subsided into a dull ache rather than a sharp pain, Olivia felt emptied out but also somehow lighter, as if she had been carrying stones in her pockets and finally set them down. The next few weeks brought changes to Fort Stockton. A cavalry unit arrived from the fort, properly armed and organized, and began systematic patrols of the surrounding territory. They found Samuel Rake's body 3 days later, dead from blood loss in a gully 20 miles north of town. The reign of terror he had brought to the region was finally over. The 2 captured outlaws were tried, found guilty, and hanged. Olivia did not attend the execution, having no desire to watch more death even if it was justice being served. Instead, she focused on the life she was building in Fort Stockton, on the work at the stable and her growing relationship with Yates. It was not a whirlwind romance, but something steadier and deeper. They worked together during the days, their partnership now seasoned with affection and genuine love. Yates taught her more advanced skills with horses, how to recognize early signs of illness, how to gentle a skittish animal with patience and kindness. She in turn shared her knowledge of herbal remedies her mother had taught her, ways to treat minor ailments and injuries in the horses. Their evenings were spent in conversation, sometimes serious and sometimes playful, always honest. Yates told her about his parents who had died of fever when he was 16, about the uncle who had taken him in and taught him the stable business, about his dreams of someday owning a proper ranch. Olivia shared her fears and hopes, the nightmares that still occasionally woke her, the growing sense that she might actually have found a place where she belonged. "I love you," Yates said one evening in late November, the words simple and direct. They were sitting by a small fire outside the stable, wrapped in blankets against the cold, watching the stars wheel overhead. "I know we have not known each other long by some standards, but I know my own heart. I love you, Olivia Jensen, and I want to spend my life with you if you will have me." Olivia's heart felt too large for her chest. "I love you too. I think I have for weeks now. I was just too afraid to say it out loud, afraid that if I named it, something would happen to take it away." "Nothing is going to take me away from you. I am here, and I am yours for as long as you want me." "Always," she said. "I want you always." He kissed her then, gentle and sweet, a promise sealed beneath the vast Texas sky. When they finally drew apart, Yates reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. "This was my mother's," he said, opening it to reveal a simple gold ring with a small garnet stone. "It is not fancy, but it is all I have to offer. Olivia, will you marry me?" She did not need to think about her answer. Yes, absolutely yes. They were married in January of 1879, a small ceremony in the stone church with Mrs. Chen and Sheriff Porter among the witnesses. Olivia wore a dress Mrs. Chen helped her make from blue calico that matched her eyes, and Yates wore his best suit, his hair neatly combed and his face shining with happiness. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Yates kissed her like she was the most precious thing in the world, and Olivia felt joy she had not imagined possible after all the darkness. They honeymooned, if it could be called that, by taking 3 days away from the stable to ride out to a beautiful spot Yates knew in the hills, where a spring fed a small pool surrounded by cottonwoods. They camped under the stars, talking late into the night, making plans for their future. Yates wanted to expand the stable, maybe purchase some land for breeding horses. Olivia wanted to start a small garden, maybe sell vegetables and herbs at the market. Together they dreamed of children someday, a house with space for a growing family, a life built on honest work and genuine love. When they returned to Fort Stockton, they threw themselves into making those dreams reality. Yates negotiated to buy the property adjacent to the stable, planning to build a proper house there. Olivia worked on improving the stable's reputation, treating the horses with such care that word spread among the ranchers and travelers. People began bringing their animals specifically to board with the Irvings, trusting that they would receive excellent care. Money was tight but not desperate. They saved carefully, planning for the future. Olivia discovered she had a talent for training horses, particularly young or difficult animals that others had given up on. She worked with them patiently, never using harsh methods, earning their trust through consistency and kindness. Yates watched her work with pride, often telling her she had a gift. Spring brought unexpected news. Mrs. Henderson, the widow who had survived the attack on her ranch, came to see Olivia one afternoon. She was a small woman, still dressed in mourning black, but there was strength in her weathered face. "I wanted to thank you," she said simply. "Sheriff Porter told me you were the one who first warned about Samuel Rake, and that nobody believed you. If they had listened, my Bill and my boys might still be alive. But I do not blame you for that. I blame the men who were too stubborn to hear the truth from a woman's lips." Olivia did not know what to say. "I am so sorry for your loss, Mrs. Henderson. I know you are. I also know you are the one whose shot turned Rake into the sheriff's line of fire during the fight. You helped bring him down, helped ensure he could not hurt anyone else. That means something to me." The older woman pressed a small bag into Olivia's hands. "This was Bill's. I want you to have it." Inside the bag were $200 in banknotes. Olivia gasped. "Mrs. Henderson, I cannot accept this. It is too much. It is mine to give, and I want you to have it. Use it to build your life here, to make something good out of all this tragedy. That is the best revenge against men like Rake, showing that they did not break us." The money made a tremendous difference. Yates was able to purchase materials to begin building their house, a modest 2-room structure but solid and well made. They worked on it together in the evenings and on Sundays, Olivia learning carpentry skills she had never imagined needing. By summer the house was complete, with glass windows that caught the light and a porch where they could sit in the cool evenings. Moving into their own home felt like the final piece falling into place. This was theirs, built with their own hands, a symbol of everything they had survived and overcome. The first night they spent there, lying together in their new bed, Yates held Olivia close and whispered, "We made it. After everything, we made it to the other side." "We did," she agreed. "Together." Summer turned to fall, and Olivia discovered she was pregnant. The news filled her with equal parts joy and terror. She had watched her own mother die from complications of childbirth with a baby who did not survive, and the fear of history repeating itself was powerful. But Dr. Stevens was competent and reassuring, and Yates was so excited about becoming a father that his enthusiasm gradually overcame her fear. "What do you hope for?" he asked one evening, his hand resting on her still flat stomach. "Boy or girl, healthy," Olivia said firmly. "That is all I hope for, healthy and safe." "Fair enough. But I have to admit, I keep imagining a little girl with your dark hair and stubborn spirit, or a boy with your blue eyes and terrible jokes." "My jokes are not terrible. They are sophisticated humor that you simply do not appreciate." She laughed, swatting at him playfully, and he caught her hand and kissed it. These moments of simple happiness still sometimes caught Olivia off guard, the realization that this was her life now. Not running, not afraid, but building something lasting with a man she loved. Winter brought its own challenges. The cold was harsh that year, and several of the horses developed respiratory problems that required careful nursing. Olivia, heavy with pregnancy now, still insisted on helping in the stable despite Yates's protests. They had hired a young man named Thomas to assist with the heavier work, but Olivia knew the horses and their needs better than anyone except Yates himself. "You should be resting," Yates fretted as she mixed a poultice for Dancer's inflamed joints. "I will rest when the horses are cared for. Besides, moving around is better for me than sitting idle. Dr. Stevens said so." "Dr. Stevens also said not to overdo it." "I am not overdoing anything. I am doing exactly what needs to be done." But she accepted his arm when he offered it, letting him help her stand from where she had been kneeling beside Dancer's stall. Their daughter was born in March of 1880, a month early but healthy and strong despite her small size. They named her Rose, after Yates's mother, and from the moment Olivia held her, she understood what it meant to have your heart existing outside your body. Rose was perfect, with wisps of dark hair and eyes that would eventually turn the same blue as her father's. Yates was besotted, spending every free moment with his daughter, singing to her in a surprisingly good voice, telling her stories about the horses and the stars and all the wonders of the world she would grow up to explore. Watching him with Rose, seeing the gentle way he cradled her tiny form and the wonder in his expression, made Olivia fall in love with him all over again. "You are a natural at this," she told him one night as he paced the floor with Rose, soothing her through a bout of colic. "I am terrified I am going to break her. She is so small." "You will not break her. You have the steadiest hands of anyone I know." Life settled into a new rhythm, organized around Rose's needs and the demands of the stable. It was exhausting, particularly in the early months when Rose woke multiple times each night, but it was also deeply fulfilling. Olivia had never imagined she could be this happy, that the darkness she had lived through could give way to so much light. Rose grew quickly, a healthy baby who rarely fussed and seemed fascinated by everything around her. As soon as she could hold up her head, Yates was carrying her around the stable, introducing her to each horse by name. Dancer was particularly gentle with the baby, lowering her head to sniff delicately at Rose's outstretched fingers. "She is going to be a horsewoman like her mother," Yates predicted proudly, "or a stable owner like her father, or something we have not even thought of yet. The world is changing. By the time Rose is grown, who knows what opportunities will exist for women?" It was a generous thought, one that reflected Yates's fundamental belief in equality and potential. He never treated Olivia as less capable because she was a woman, never dismissed her ideas or opinions. He was a true partner in every sense, and she made sure to tell him often how much she appreciated that. The stable continued to thrive. Word of their excellent care and fair prices spread throughout the region. They had regular customers now, ranchers who would board their horses nowhere else, cavalry officers who insisted on purchasing mounts that the Irvings had trained. Money was no longer tight. They were not wealthy by any means, but they were comfortable, able to save for the future and occasionally indulge in small luxuries. On Rose's first birthday, they hosted a small celebration at their home. Mrs. Chen came, bringing a beautiful embroidered blanket she had made for Rose. Sheriff Porter attended, now retired but still a presence in the community, bringing a carved wooden horse that made Rose clap her hands with delight. Several of their regular customers stopped by with small gifts and warm wishes. Looking around at the gathered friends at the life they had built, Olivia felt overwhelmed with gratitude. That evening, after everyone had left and Rose was asleep in her cradle, Olivia and Yates sat on their porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson. "Do you ever think about what your life might have been if the wagon train had not been attacked?" Yates asked quietly. "If you had made it to El Paso, found work with your aunt," Olivia considered the question. "Sometimes. I wonder if I would have been happy there, or if I would have always felt like I was just surviving rather than truly living." "What made you ask?" "I was just thinking about how something terrible led you here, to Fort Stockton, to me. And I feel guilty sometimes for being grateful for how things turned out, knowing what it cost you to get here. I understand that feeling. I have had similar thoughts." She took his hand, lacing their fingers together. "But I think maybe the truth is that life is complicated. Terrible things happened, people died who should not have, and I carry scars from that which will never fully heal. And also I found you. I found a home and a purpose and a love I never imagined possible. Both things can be true at the same time. You are wiser than I am." Olivia Irving. "I have had more practice at surviving loss. It teaches you things, even if they are hard lessons." They sat in comfortable silence as the stars emerged one by one in the darkening sky. From inside the house, they could hear Rose making small sleeping sounds, content and safe. The horses in the stable were settled for the night. The town of Fort Stockton spread out below them, lights beginning to glow in windows as families gathered for evening meals. "I love you," Yates said, the words as sincere as the first time he had spoken them. "I love the life we have built together, and I love who I am when I am with you. I love you too, more than I knew it was possible to love someone." Olivia leaned her head on his shoulder. "Thank you for believing my story when nobody else would. Thank you for seeing me as someone worth saving, worth loving. You saved yourself, Olivia. I just had the good fortune to be there when you did." 2 years passed in a blur of work and family. Rose grew into a bright, curious toddler who spoke in complete sentences and asked endless questions about everything she saw. She loved the horses with a passion that delighted both her parents, showing no fear even of the largest animals. By the time she was 3, she was helping feed the horses with her father's supervision, her small hands carefully measuring grain into buckets. Olivia discovered she was pregnant again in the fall of 1882. This time the fear was less, replaced by excitement and confidence born of experience. She and Yates had discussed wanting more children, hoping to give Rose siblings to grow up with. Their son was born the following spring, a lusty baby with Yates's blue eyes and a shocking amount of dark hair. They named him William, after Olivia's father, and he completed their family in a way that felt perfect and right. Rose was enchanted with her baby brother, insisting on helping with everything from diaper changes to bath time. The stable had grown enough that they now employed 3 full-time workers in addition to themselves. Thomas had proven himself invaluable and was now the assistant manager, handling much of the day-to-day operations. This gave Yates and Olivia more time with their children, more freedom to focus on the training and breeding programs that interested them most. They purchased land north of town, 20 acres with good water and grazing, and began breeding horses in earnest. Olivia had a particular talent for matching bloodlines, for seeing potential in young animals that others overlooked. Their horses developed a reputation for intelligence and steady temperament, exactly the qualities cavalry officers and ranchers valued most. Life was not without challenges. There were droughts that stressed the pastures, illnesses that took horses they had grown to love, financial setbacks that required careful navigation. But they faced each challenge together, their partnership strengthened by years of mutual support and trust. When Olivia's nightmares occasionally returned, Yates was there to hold her. When Yates worried about money or the future, Olivia was there to remind him how far they had come and how capable they were of handling whatever arose. Fort Stockton itself was changing. The railroad was coming, bringing new opportunities and new people. The military presence was decreasing as the frontier became more settled, but commerce was increasing. More families were moving to the area, drawn by the promise of land and opportunity. The town was building a proper school, and Olivia and Yates were already planning for Rose and William to attend when they were old enough. On a warm evening in June of 1885, 7 years after Olivia had first stumbled into Fort Stockton covered in river mud and desperation, she stood on the porch of their home watching her children play in the yard. Rose, now 5½, was showing William, age 2, how to braid grass into a rope. Both children were laughing, their faces bright with uncomplicated joy. Yates came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and resting his chin on her shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" How impossible this would have seemed to me back then. If someone had told me, on that day I arrived here terrified and alone, that 7 years later I would be standing in front of my own house watching my 2 healthy children play while my husband held me, I would never have believed it possible. You have always been stronger than you gave yourself credit for. Maybe. Or maybe I just got lucky enough to find someone who made me want to be strong. She turned in his arms to face him. "We have built something good here, Yates, something worth all the struggle it took to get here." "We have, and we are not done building yet." His eyes were warm with the love that had never diminished, only deepened over the years. "I am thinking we might need to expand the house again. Rose is getting old enough to want her own room, and William will need his own space before long." "Already planning renovations. You know that means weeks of sawdust and chaos." "I know, but our family is worth a little chaos." He kissed her forehead gently. "Besides, you love a project, admit it." She laughed because it was true. They were always working on something, always planning the next improvement to the stable or the house, or the breeding program. It was part of what made their life together satisfying, this sense of continual growth and possibility. That night, after the children were asleep and the house was quiet, Olivia pulled out the small wooden box where she kept her most precious possessions. Inside was the locket she had worn the day she arrived in Fort Stockton, the only thing she had managed to save from her old life. Next to it was the ring Yates had given her when he proposed, along with a pressed wildflower from their wedding day and a lock of Rose's baby hair. She added a new item to the collection, a photograph they had taken just that week at the new photography studio in town. It showed their whole family, Yates and Olivia seated with William on Olivia's lap and Rose standing between them. Everyone was looking at the camera, even William, who had been miraculously still for the long exposure. They looked like what they were: a family, stable and happy and whole. Yates appeared in the doorway, watching as she closed the box. Preserving memories. Something like that. I want to remember this, all of it. The struggle and the joy, the fear and the love. I never want to forget how far we have come. He sat beside her on the bed, taking her hand. We have come far, but I think the best is still ahead of us. Watching our children grow, building our business, growing old together, all of that is still waiting. Promise me something, Olivia said suddenly. Promise that we will always be honest with each other, always face things together like we have been doing. Promise that we will never take this for granted. I promise. On everything I hold sacred, I promise. He pulled her close, and she rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. We are going to have a beautiful life, Olivia Irving. We already do. She believed him. After everything she had survived, all the darkness she had walked through to reach this place, she had earned the right to believe in happiness. To believe in a future filled with love and purpose, and the everyday miracles of children growing and horses running free, and a partnership built on mutual respect and genuine affection. The nightmares still came occasionally, flashes of river water and gunfire and Samuel Rake's scarred face. But they came less frequently now, and when they did, Olivia knew how to weather them. She would wake, Yates would hold her, and she would remind herself that she was safe, that she had survived, that the life she had built was real and solid and hers. Years continued to pass, each one bringing its own joys and challenges. Rose grew into a confident young woman with her mother's determination and her father's easy charm. She was brilliant with horses, able to gentle the most difficult animals with patience and intuition that seemed almost supernatural. William was more interested in the business side of things, showing an early aptitude for numbers and negotiation that suggested he would excel at managing the stable's growing operations. Olivia and Yates's breeding program became renowned throughout Texas and beyond. Their horses were known for intelligence, stamina, and steady temperaments that made them ideal for both cavalry use and ranch work. They employed a dozen people now, had expanded their land holdings to over 200 acres, and were financially secure in a way that still sometimes amazed Olivia. But more than the success, more than the material comfort they had achieved, what mattered was the love that sustained them. Yates still brought her wildflowers for no reason except that they reminded him of her. She still made his favorite meals on days when he seemed tired or discouraged. They still took walks together in the evenings, holding hands and talking about everything and nothing. They still laughed together, worked together, dreamed together. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Yates surprised Olivia with a trip back to the spot where they had honeymooned, the spring in the hills surrounded by cottonwoods. They left Rose and William with Mrs. Chen, who adored the children and spoiled them thoroughly, and rode out together on a pair of their finest horses, sitting by the spring as the sun set, watching the water reflect the changing colors of the sky. Olivia felt a peace so profound it brought tears to her eyes. "What is wrong?" Yates asked immediately, concerned. "Nothing is wrong. Everything is right, so completely, perfectly right that it almost scares me." She wiped at her eyes. "Do you remember that night I had the nightmare early on when I was working for you? You told me that wounds do not always show on the outside. I remember. I think mine have finally healed. Not disappeared. I will always carry the scars of what happened, but healed enough that they do not control my life anymore. Healed enough that I can be fully present in my happiness instead of always waiting for it to be taken away." Yates took her face in his hands, his touch infinitely gentle. "You deserve every bit of happiness you have found, Olivia. You deserve all of this and more. So do you. You saved me, Yates Irving. Not from the river or the outlaws, I did that myself. But you saved me from believing I would always be alone, always be afraid. You showed me what love could be when it was real and honest and built on partnership. Then I guess we saved each other. Because before you came into my life, I was just going through motions. Working, surviving, but not really living. You gave me purpose beyond the stable. You gave me a family and a future and reasons to dream bigger than I had ever let myself imagine. They made love under the stars that night, with the tenderness and passion of two people who knew each other completely, and loved each other more for that knowledge. Afterwards, wrapped in blankets in each other's arms, they talked about their children and their plans for the stable and all the years still ahead of them. You ever wonder what would have happened if Sheriff Porter had believed you that first day? Yates asked. If they had caught Samuel Rake before he could kill anyone else? Sometimes. But then I think about how every single thing that happened, good and terrible, led me to exactly where I am now. And I would not change this, would not risk losing what we have built together, even to undo the pain of getting here. That is a hard-won wisdom, being able to see both the cost and the value. I learned from the best. She kissed him softly. You taught me that it is possible to acknowledge the darkness while still choosing to live in the light. The conversation drifted into comfortable silence, and eventually they slept, safe and content under the vast Texas sky. When they returned home the next day, Rose and William greeted them with enthusiastic hugs and endless questions about their trip. Mrs. Chen smiled knowingly and shooed the children toward the kitchen where she had cookies waiting. Life resumed its normal rhythms, the busy pace of running a successful business and raising a family. But Olivia carried the peace from that anniversary trip with her, a settled certainty that this was her life now. Not running, not surviving, but thriving. Building something lasting with the man she loved, raising children who would grow up secure and valued, contributing to a community that had become truly home. Years later, when Rose married a young cavalry officer and moved to a posting in Arizona, Olivia felt the bittersweet ache of watching a child leave home. But she also felt proud, knowing they had raised a daughter strong enough and confident enough to build her own life. When William took over more and more of the stable's management, showing a natural talent for leadership, she and Yates were able to step back slightly, taking on advisory roles rather than handling every detail themselves. They used their increased free time to travel a bit, visiting Rose in Arizona and exploring other parts of Texas they had never seen. But they always came back to Fort Stockton, to the home they had built together, the stable that was their life's work, the community that had become family. On a spring evening in 1895, 17 years after Olivia had first arrived in Fort Stockton, she and Yates sat on their porch watching another sunset. They were both graying now. Olivia's dark hair shot through with silver and Yates's temples white, but their love had never wavered. If anything, it had deepened, seasoned by years of facing life's challenges together and emerging stronger for it. You ever regret it? Olivia asked suddenly. Taking a chance on a mud-covered stranger with a story nobody believed, Yates laughed, the sound warm and familiar. Not for a single second. Best decision I ever made was offering you that job. Second best was asking you to marry me. What if I had said no to either? Then I would have had to work harder to convince you, but I do not think you would have said no. I think we recognized something in each other from the start, two people who had survived hardship and were looking for something better. We found it, did not we, something better. We built it together. There is a difference. He took her hand, his grip still strong despite the years. And we are not done building yet. We have grandchildren to spoil once Rose has her baby. We have young horses to train. We have years of sunsets left to watch together. Olivia squeezed his hand, feeling the familiar calluses from a lifetime of working with horses. I love you, Yates Irving. More now than even on the day I married you. I love you too, Olivia Irving. You are the finest thing that ever happened to me, and I thank God every day that you walked into my stable covered in river mud and stubbornness. They sat together as the sun disappeared below the horizon and the first stars emerged. Two people who had found each other in the midst of chaos and built a life of love and purpose. Behind them, their home glowed with lamplight. In the stable, horses nickered softly as they settled for the night. Somewhere in Arizona, their daughter prepared to welcome their first grandchild. In Fort Stockton, their son managed the business they had built from nothing. It was a life hard won through survival and courage, through choosing to believe in better things even when the world seemed dark. It was a life built on partnership and mutual respect, on honest work and genuine affection. It was a life that began with terror and desperation, but had transformed into something beautiful and lasting. And as Olivia sat there with Yates's hand in hers, surrounded by everything they had created together, she knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she belonged. The girl who had clung to a tree in the raging Pecos River, desperate and alone, could never have imagined this future. But the woman she had become had earned every bit of happiness she found. The story that nobody believed had become her life's foundation. The man who believed her when others would not had become her partner in all things. The love they built together had created a legacy that would extend far beyond their own years. It was enough. It was more than enough. It was everything.